U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is due to visit Israel to ask for support in stopping the war in Gaza from spreading further. Now, he has been touring Arab nations, including a key mediator, Qatar, negotiating their help in containing the conflict. And Mr. Blinken's latest stop is the United Arab Emirates, where he held talks with its nation's ruler. Now, during earlier discussions in Qatar, Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman warned that the recent killing of Hamas's deputy leader in Beirut could complicate efforts to free hostages held in Gaza. Israel has not claimed responsibility for that attack, but the incident has led Hamas to double down on its fight against Tel Aviv. Israel not relenting either. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant says the country will shift from an intense phase of the war towards different types of special operations. But he warned that the next chapter in the conflict will last for a longer time. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has deplored conditions at Al-Aqsa hospital, which the agency says is the most important health facility remaining in central Gaza. A team of UN officials visited the compound yesterday and found overcrowded wards, patients being treated on the floor, and a dire lack of medical staff. The agency believes only 5 doctors remain in Al-Aqsa. 3 aid groups had to withdraw from the hospital, citing increasing fighting around the building. The WHO also says it had to cancel a mission to bring medical supplies to northern parts of the Strip because airstrikes and movement restrictions made deliveries nearly impossible. Trent Murray joins us live from Tel Aviv with more. Trent, how does Israel's plans that this next chapter of war against Hamas will last a longer time align with what Secretary Blinken wants to achieve in Gaza?
Well, I think the fact that Yoav Gallant made those comments about shifting military strategy to the Wall Street Journal overnight was very interesting timing, because it comes, as you say, as Secretary Blinken gets ready to arrive here. And we know that the Americans, both publicly and privately, have been signalling their desire for Israel to provide some answers on when it's going to move away from the high-intensity style of operations that we've been seeing to more targeted strikes like the one we saw in Beirut, where they targeted a specific leader of Hamas rather than ensnaring all of the civilians as part of their strikes like we're seeing in Gaza. I think what you are going to see when Secretary Blinken arrives is a reaffirmment that the US does continue to support Israel as it tries to fight against Hamas and ensure its national security. But I also think there'll be some discussions, and certainly Israeli media sources are saying there will be, around what can be done now to try and reduce the suffering as the humanitarian crisis escalates, and also what the day after this war will look like. Certainly Secretary Blinken has been speaking about that concept of the day after during some of those visits to other parts of the Middle East, including Jordan, Turkey and the UAE. And now it's really, I think, time for the Israelis to sit down with him and to try and provide a framework of how they see this conflict continuing over the coming weeks and months.
Now, Israel has said its operations in northern Gaza nearly complete. While they're saying that, what does the situation on the ground reflect?
Well, the latest operational update from the Israeli military certainly suggests that the fighting has shifted further south. They've reported heavy firefights with Hamas militants around Khan Yunis in the past day. They say that they targeted 30 specific buildings within that part of the Strip, buildings they say were being used by Hamas to store weapons and also launch attacks on IDF troops. They do say, though, that in the north, despite having gained operational control of that region, there are still some sporadic attacks from Hamas militants, but they believe they are becoming less common and that those attackers are now operating without commanders, given the heavy bombardment. The IDF says it's killed now 8,000 members of Hamas. Of course, we have no way of verifying that number, but that is certainly what they are saying. But yeah, I think the concern now is that the fighting is continuing to shift south. And we have to remember, in the south, that's where all of the civilians have evacuated to, which is why you've got the likes of the UN, the WHO, and many other aid groups really sounding the alarm about the dire situation there.
As always, many thanks, Trent Murray in Tel Aviv.